She's strapped to a cold iron bed. Leather belts dig into her wrists. Her feet twitch uncontrollably. A wired contraption is pressed against her temples. A sudden jolt, then another. Her back arches. Her mouth opens in a silent scream. The air smells like burning flesh. Around her, men in black coats observe without blinking. They scribble notes. One adjusts a dial. Another clicks a camera. She is 23 years old. She is not a criminal. She is not a volunteer. She is a patient. And this is not fiction. This happened in a real hospital under the name of medical progress. Her name was Madeline, and science burned her alive. In the next 15 minutes, I'm going to tell you the story of Madeline, a woman erased from history, used, shocked, and tortured in the name of medicine. You've seen her face. It appears in psychology textbooks, medical lectures, even modern research papers, but you've never heard her name. She was labeled hysterical, photographed mid-seizure, and displayed to crowds like a museum exhibit, all under the care of one of the most celebrated doctors in Europe. What they did to her was praised as science, but it was something much darker, and the truth isn't buried in conspiracy. It's buried in the archives of medical journals, asylum records, and dusty university libraries. This isn't just about the 1800s, because the way society treats women, especially women in pain, still follows this same pattern. Picture this: Paris, 1878. Gas lamps flicker through the foggy streets. The Seine glistens under a pale moon, and at the edge of the city, hidden behind stone walls and iron gates, stands the Salpêtrière, a sprawling fortress of misery. Once a gunpowder factory, the Salpêtrière had become something else, a dumping ground for women. Inside, over 5,000 women are locked away. Most not for crimes, but for being inconvenient. Some were poor, some had epilepsy, some suffered postpartum depression, others had simply disagreed with their husbands. They were labeled hysterical, melancholic, immoral, and once you entered Salpêtrière, you didn't leave. It was here that Madeleine arrived. We don't know her last name. We don't know her crime, if there even was one, but we do know what happened to her, because her body was photographed, her face recorded, her convulsions measured like clockwork, and at the center of it all was a man, Dr. Jean-Martin Charcot. To the outside world, he was a genius, the father of modern neurology, the man who trained Sigmund Freud. To the women of Salpêtrière, he was God, and Madeleine was his masterpiece. Let that sink in. A young woman trapped inside an asylum, not treated, not cared for, but used. And her story was about to take a turn that would blur the line between medicine and sadism. It begins with a stage. Every Tuesday, the lecture hall at Salpêtrière transforms into a theater. Students pack the balconies. Doctors shuffle in with notebooks. The audience buzzes with anticipation, not for a lecture, but a performance. At the center of the room, a wooden table, a gas lamp, and a trembling girl, Madeline. Charcot stands beside her, dressed immaculately, gesturing like a conductor before an orchestra. He speaks of hysteria, a mysterious condition that causes women to faint, convulse, scream, and collapse. He claims it's a neurological disease rooted in the female reproductive system, and Madeleine is his perfect case study. He hypnotizes her. She writhes, seizes, collapses on cue. The crowd murmurs. Pens scribble furiously. Cameras flash. She is a star, but not a willing one. Think about that. Every week she is paraded in front of dozens of men, her trauma reduced to spectacle. They call it science, but it gets even worse. But here's where it gets even more disturbing. As Madeleine's fame grows within medical circles, Charcot escalates his methods. Hypnosis gives way to electricity. They attach electrodes to her arms, her legs, her temples. Charcot claims the shocks will reveal hidden traumas and provoke the most pure hysterical episodes. Madeleine screams. Her body spasms violently. The doctors smile. Excellent response, one writes in his notes. Her skin blisters. Her muscles twitch uncontrollably. Sometimes she loses consciousness. Sometimes she vomits. Always she is restrained. And always it is called a procedure. Imagine being shocked into seizures while your audience applauds. This wasn't just Charcot. This was endorsed by the highest levels of the French medical establishment, and her image spreads far beyond the walls of Salpêtrière. In 1880, the first edition of Iconographie photographique de la Salpêtrière is published, a photographic catalog of hysteria. Madeleine's face appears more than 20 times, twisted in agony, frozen in fear, limbs contorted, no name, no biography, just a body. It sells out in medical schools across Europe, and Madeleine becomes the anonymous poster child of a condition she never asked for. But the story gets even more revealing, because her death wasn't the end, it was just another chapter. But it doesn't stop there. When Madeleine dies, her cause of death listed as nervous collapse, her body doesn't return to her family. Instead, it's dissected. Charcot preserves her brain in a glass jar, labeling it with a code. That jar becomes a teaching tool. Her brain is studied, measured, sketched. No one asks what she believed, what she feared, who she loved. They call her Case 243, a textbook example. And Charcot, he's celebrated. He receives honors, awards, international invitations. Freud calls him a master. Salpêtrière becomes a pilgrimage site for young doctors. Madeleine's suffering built an empire. And yet, none of those men ever asked what it felt like to be Madeleine. One final chilling detail. Some of the photographs taken of Madeleine, showing her mid-seizure, eyes rolled back, limbs bound, were later reprinted in 20th century magazines as art. That's right, her pain became aesthetic. People admired the expression, the movement, the beauty of madness. They didn't even know her name, and by then, no one seemed to care. This is still relevant today because the systems that failed Madeleine still exist, just with different names. Let's talk about medical gaslighting. In recent studies, women are significantly more likely than men to have their physical symptoms dismissed as anxiety or exaggeration. One shocking example, a 2022 study published in Academic Emergency Medicine found that women experiencing heart attacks were 7 times more likely to be misdiagnosed and sent home than men. 7 times. In the 1800s, they called it hysteria. Today, it's labeled stress, burnout, or psychosomatic. Same pattern, same dismissal. And this isn't just about gender, it's about power. Who gets to define what pain is real? Who gets believed? Who becomes a case study and who gets care? Madeleine's seizures weren't performed. They were responses, possibly to trauma, abuse, neurological disorder, or something we'll never fully know. But instead of helping her, they turned her into a mirror for their theories. They made her reflect their ideas of madness, not her reality. And that's what we're still doing today, especially to women, people of color, and those in poverty when they say, "I'm in pain," and we respond with a checklist and a shrug. Let that sink in. Madeleine was institutionalized because she was inconvenient, because her symptoms didn't fit the mold, because her body was easier to photograph than to listen to. And now we see it in women being told they're too emotional to get ADHD diagnoses, in Black women being 3 times more likely to die during childbirth due to ignored symptoms, in disabled people fighting to prove they're not faking it. The ghost of Salpêtrière still lingers in hospital waiting rooms, psychiatric evaluations, and insurance policies. The stage is smaller, the tools more advanced, but the performance continues. She was 23 years old. That's the age most people graduate college, fall in love, begin their lives. But Madeleine's life was taken, slowly, cruelly, and with applause. Her voice was never recorded, her story wasn't told. Her body was used, dissected, displayed, and then forgotten, but not anymore. Every time you see a black and white photo of a convulsing woman in a textbook, remember, she had a name, she had a life, she had no choice. Every time a woman says, "My doctor didn't believe me," remember, this isn't new. Every time someone calls a person crazy for crying out in pain, remember, history has a name for that. Salpêtrière, Madeleine, she was 23 years old, and we must never let it happen again.